Hey there guys, I'm John Campea. Thanks for visiting my movie vlog, and this is my quick review of the brand new Wes Anderson film, Isle of Dogs. Now, Isle of Dogs is Wes Anderson's second animated feature film. Of course, Wes Anderson has given us such films as Rushmore, The Royal Tenenbaums, The Grand Budapest Hotel, Moonrise Kingdom, of course, his first animated film, The Fantastic Mr. Fox. Isle of Dogs basically takes place in a slightly futuristic Japanese city that has banished all dogs from their cities and sent them to live in exile on this all-trash island, becoming known as the Isle of Dogs. A few months after the exile, a young boy named Atari, who also just happens to be the nephew of the leader of that city who imposed the sanctions, decides to go off on his own to that Isle of Dogs and search for his faithful dog, Spots. He's found by a local pack of dogs who are so taken with the boy because in all the months they've lived in exile, he's the first human master to come looking for his dog. And of course, adventure ensues. I'll say this, as a big fan of Wes Anderson, especially of The Royal Tenenbaums, I enjoyed this movie. I think it's good. It's got enough good elements in there, humor, heart, some political commentary as well. You can approach this movie on several different levels and it works on all of them. However, also as a Wes Anderson fan, I found the movie to be put together a little bit more clunky than I'm used to seeing from his movies. Yes, a lot of his movies will have slower pace, but this one felt like it was drudging along at times. So overall, good movie, just not as good as I was kind of hoping or expecting from a Wes Anderson film. One of the things that really works well in Isle of Dogs are the underlying themes of loyalty, courage, bravery, family. These sorts of things that would drive a young 12-year-old boy, Atari, to go dangerously to this isle completely devoid of human life and only has wild dogs on it in search of his faithful longtime friend is so heartwarming and moving, and it moves the other characters in the film around him as well. Speaking of the dogs, you have a wonderful voice cast who voiced this film in a very Wes Anderson kind of way, starting off with Bryan Cranston, Edward Norton, Bill Murray, Jeff Goldblum, Greta Gerwig, Scarlett Johansson. I mean, basically this voice cast just goes on and on and on. It's a terrific cast. The movie also uses this really creative device that is so simple but kind of profound as well. So basically, the humans as they're speaking in Japanese, they usually just keep it in Japanese and a lot of the times don't translate it and don't give us subtitles because we're hearing them speak from the perspective of the dogs. They're speaking, but we don't understand what they're talking about. Whereas when the dogs speak, we're hearing them speaking English. It's a really neat little device that I can't imagine why more films haven't taken advantage of this before. Throughout the film too, there's some subtle and also not so subtle political metaphors that are used that sometimes work kind of nicely and sometimes kind of feel forced in there and a little bit overbearing. I'll also say that the humor is a little bit hit and miss. Mostly hit, like for every 3 minutes that I was smiling and giggling and laughing out loud, there would be 30-second periods where I'd just be cringing because the humor was just missing completely. I'll say this, to me, one of the biggest strengths of this movie, if not the biggest strength of the movie, is the straight up dialogue and sometimes narration of the film as well, which is not uncommon in a Wes Anderson film. Now, yes, a lot of times the dialogue is expository in nature, and that can sometimes frustrate audiences when you give them too much exposition. But the way Wes Anderson uses that sort of exposition is just on another level and really makes it work. Because it's within the dialogue itself that we really get a glimpse of the heart of the characters, their starting positions with their hearts, how their hearts evolve and change both with dogs and the humans and the society in general, which has kind of cast these dogs out. And Anderson is one of the few directors who is really good at using expository dialogue as a way of also expressing heart and the whole themes of what's going on in a scene. My biggest criticism of Isle of Dogs would come in the form of pacing. Now, many of Wes Anderson's films can be slower films, but that's fine. Slow does not mean that there's no pace. It just means it has a certain cadence to it. But I found Isle of Dogs quite often through the movie sluggish. Like moving from point A to point B sometimes felt a little bit more of a labor than it should for an audience member. As a result, even though Isle of Dogs only comes in at about an hour and 40 minutes, it feels a hell of a lot longer than that. Like it feels like I've been sitting in the theater for a good 2 hours and 20 minutes when really it wasn't that long, and that comes from pacing problems. I'll also say there is this side character named Tracy Walker, voiced by Greta Gerwig, who is like a foreign exchange student she's also a child living in Japan at the time. And honestly, her little side story was kind of pointless. It's used to give some cute lines here and there, but overall, it really didn't have an impact on the overall story or narrative of the film. And I felt they could have just cut that entire subplot out of the film. But look, ultimately, despite some of the sluggishness, despite some of the subplots that could have been removed from the film, and despite the fact that some of the humor just kind of missed the mark a bit, overall, this is an enjoyable movie. It's got great dialogue, really good heart. You feel the connection between humans and their dogs. Most of the humor in the film does indeed work, and like most good Wes Anderson films, it makes you think about the movie you're watching instead of just sitting there and consuming the movie you're watching. So overall, not my favorite Wes Anderson film to date, but still a pretty good one that I think you should go out and give a shot to. But listen, guys, the big issue here is, have you had a chance to see Isle of Dogs yet? If so, what did you think about it? Jump down to the comments section below and let me know your thoughts. Listen, guys, while you're here, why don't you click on that subscribe button and also click the thumbs up button. Follow me on social media on Twitter, simply @JohnCampea. That'll do it for me for now, guys. Thanks a lot for joining me. My name's John Campea, and until my next video, bye-bye.